The war room on the Shah Prime buzzed with panic. Council leader Zethara stared at the holographic display showing red markers across 17 star systems. Each red dot represented a world that no longer existed. The Vorthic horde had consumed everything in their path, turning entire populations into fuel for their biomechanical war machines. How long until they reached the core worlds? Zethara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Military Commander Velemon checked his readings. 3 cycles at most. Our fleets cannot stop them. They adapt to our weapons too quickly. The Zelhari had always been a peaceful species. Their technology focused on healing, building, and exploring. When the Vorthic first appeared at their borders, the Zelhari thought diplomacy would work. They sent ambassadors with gifts and treaties. The Vorthic sent back recordings of those ambassadors being fed to their bioprocessors while still alive. The ancient vault, whispered science advisor Kethlos. We still have the artifact from the dead civilization ruins. Zethara turned to him. The beacon device? You said it was too dangerous to use. It was designed to call for help across the galaxy. The old records say it summons warriors from garden worlds. If we are going to die anyway, perhaps we should try. The council chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, refugee ships filled the sky. Millions of Zelhari from the outer colonies had fled here, bringing stories of horror that made even the bravest warriors shake with fear. Do it, Zethara said finally. Activate the beacon. Meanwhile, in a completely different part of the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the battleship U.E.'s Vengeance. The ship was scarred from dozens of battles, its hull patched with plates of different metals. The crew had been fighting pirates and raiders for 6 months straight. Everyone was tired, but they were used to being tired. Sir, we're picking up. Something strange, reported Communications Officer Pete Williams. It's not coming from any known human frequency. Morrison stood up and walked to the communications station. Put it on the main screen. The message was fuzzy at first, then cleared into alien script with a translation appearing below it. The voice was high-pitched and melodic, nothing like human speech. Peaceful civilization under attack. Seeking warriors from garden worlds to aid in our defense. Great rewards await those who answer our call. Please, we are dying. The bridge went quiet. Morrison had been in space for 20 years, and this was the first time he had heard from aliens. The message repeated 3 times, then cut to coordinates in an unexplored sector. Garden worlds? Asked Lieutenant Susan Mitchell from the navigation station. Are they talking about Earth? Morrison almost laughed. Earth was many things, but peaceful was not one of them. Between the hurricanes, earthquakes, venomous animals, and diseases that could kill you in a dozen different ways, Earth was barely survivable. Humans had only made it this far because their homeworld had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. Sir, what are your orders? Asked First Officer Tony Garcia. Morrison looked at the star charts. The coordinates were 3 days away at maximum speed. Command would not approve a mission to help unknown aliens. But the desperation in that voice was something Morrison recognized. He had heard it before from human colonies under attack. We're going to investigate, he said. Send a message to the other ships in our battle group. Tell them we're responding to a distress call. Sir, Command will not approve this mission, Garcia warned. Then we won't ask for approval, Morrison replied. We'll ask for forgiveness. Later, the battle group consisted of 12 ships. They were all veterans of the border wars, with crews who had seen too much death and destruction. When Morrison explained the situation, every captain volunteered to come along. 3 days later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zelhari system. What they found was chaos. Alien ships were fleeing in all directions. Some were damaged, leaking atmosphere, and debris. Others were completely destroyed, floating dead in space. "Jesus," whispered Tactical Officer Lisa Chong. "It's a massacre." Morrison studied the tactical display. The fleeing ships were clearly civilian vessels, packed with refugees. Behind them, pursuing like sharks, were the most horrifying spacecraft he had ever seen. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh, with weapons that seemed to grow from their hulls like tumors. "Those must be the Vorthik," Morrison said. "And those are the people who called for help." The refugee ships were old and slow. The Vorthik vessels were gaining on them quickly. Morrison did not need to think about what would happen when they caught up. "All ships, this is Morrison. We're going to even the odds. Target those bug ships and prepare for combat." The human battle group accelerated toward the Vorthik fleet. The alien ships were larger than the human vessels, but Morrison had been fighting with inferior numbers his entire career. The trick was to hit hard and fast before the enemy could react. "Fire," Morrison ordered. Missiles and energy beams lanced out from the human ships. The Vorthik were caught completely off guard. They had been focused on the fleeing civilians and did not expect an attack from behind. 3 of their ships exploded immediately. The others turned to face this new threat. The battle was short but brutal. The Vorthik ships were tough, but they were not prepared for human tactics. Where they expected elegant maneuvers, they got direct assaults. Where they expected surrender when damaged, they got ships that kept fighting until they were completely destroyed. When the last Vorthik ship was eliminated, Morrison opened a channel to the refugee fleet. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You called for help. We are here." The response came back in that same high-pitched voice, but this time it was shaking with emotion. "You came. You actually came. But you are not from Garden. Worlds, your ships, your weapons, your tactics. What kind of warriors are you?" Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was battle-scarred and tired. His ship was held together with spare parts and determination. They had just fought a battle against impossible odds, and won, like they always did. "We're humans," he said simply. "And we're from Earth." There was a long silence on the communication channel. Then the alien voice spoke again, much quieter this time. "Earth, we have never heard of this world. What kind of place creates warriors like you?" Morrison smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "The kind of place that tries to kill you every single day. The kind of place that makes you strong. Or makes you dead. We call it home." The aliens had called for help from Garden Worlds. Instead, they had summoned Deathworlders. Morrison had a feeling that was going to work out much better for everyone involved. Admiral Lisa Brooks had been chosen for the diplomatic mission because she was the most presentable human in the fleet. That was not saying much. Like all humans who had survived 20 years in space, she carried scars from battles, accidents, and the general hazards of living in a universe that seemed designed to kill people. But she could smile without showing too many teeth, and her voice was calm and steady. The meeting was arranged on a neutral space, station orbiting Nesha Prime. The Zelhari had insisted on multiple security scans, medical checks, and what seemed like hours of preparation. Brooks found their caution amusing. If humans wanted to hurt them, all the security in the galaxy would not stop it. "Remember," Dr. Alex Turner whispered as they walked toward the meeting room, "try not to make direct eye contact. Their research suggests it triggers a fear response." Brooks nodded. Turner was the expedition's xenobiologist, a thin man with nervous hands who seemed more afraid of the aliens than they were of him. He had been studying the Zelhari broadcasts for days, trying to understand their culture and psychology. "Also," Turner continued, "they view showing teeth as a threat display. So no smiling." "Great," Brooks muttered. "Don't look at them, don't smile." "What am I supposed to do?" stare at the floor. Actually, that might be best, Turner said seriously. The meeting room was elegant in a way that made Brooks uncomfortable. Everything was smooth curves and soft colors, designed to promote peace and harmony. The chairs were too small and too delicate for human bodies. Brooks sat down carefully, hoping she would not break anything. The Zelhari delegation entered through a side door, and Brooks immediately understood why Turner had been so nervous. The aliens were tall and graceful, with large eyes that seemed to take up half their faces. Their skin was pale blue and seemed to glow slightly in the soft light. They moved like dancers, every gesture fluid and precise. They were also clearly terrified. The lead Zelhari, who introduced himself as Council Leader Zethara, could barely speak without his voice shaking. His large eyes were fixed on Brooks' face, and she could see him trembling. The other Zelharis stayed as far away as possible, huddled together like prey animals. "We thank you for coming," Zethara said through a translation device. "Though we must admit you are not what we expected." Brooks tried to keep her voice gentle. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." "Yes, but we called for warriors from Garden Worlds. Beings of peace who could aid us in our time of need. You are ... double quotes." He paused, searching for words. "You are something else entirely." Dr. Turner stepped forward. "We're curious about your definition of Garden Worlds. Could you explain?" Zethara's translator worked for a moment. "Worlds of beauty and harmony. Places where death is rare and violence is unknown. Surely you understand." Brooks and Turner exchanged glances. Turner cleared his throat. "We consider Earth a garden world." The Zelhari delegation froze. One of them, a smaller alien with intricate patterns on his skin, spoke rapidly in their own language. The translator picked up fragments. "Impossible. Predators ... How do they survive?" "Your world," Zethara said slowly. "It is peaceful?" "Well," Brooks said, "it's mostly trying to kill you, but in a fun way." The Zelhari did not find this funny. In fact, 2 of them fainted. The others backed away until they were pressed against the far wall. Turner tried to salvage the situation. "What the Admiral means is that Earth has some challenges. Natural disasters, dangerous wildlife, diseases. But we've learned to adapt." "Dangerous wildlife?" Zethara whispered. "You mean there are creatures on your world that hunt thinking beings?" "Not really," Brooks said. "Most of them are too small to hunt humans. Though we did have some issues with bears, tigers, sharks, snakes, spiders, jellyfish, crocodiles, and basically every insect on the planet." Another Zelhari fainted. "Perhaps," Turner said quickly, "we should discuss the current situation, the Vorthic threat." Zethara seemed grateful for the change of subject. He activated a holographic display, showing the star systems around Disha Prime. Red markers indicated Vorthic-controlled territory. "They appeared without warning 18 cycles ago," he explained. "We attempted peaceful contact, but they responded with violence. They consume entire worlds, breaking down all organic matter into components for their war machines." Brooks studied the display. The Vorthic advance was systematic and efficient. They had taken the outer colonies first, then moved steadily inward. It was a classic invasion pattern, designed to cut off retreat and force surrender. "What kind of resistance have you offered?" she asked. "We are not a warrior species," Zethara said. "Our ships are designed for exploration and trade. We have some defensive capabilities, but nothing like their bioweapons." "Bioweapons?" Turner leaned forward, interested despite his nervousness. "They turn living beings into components for their machines. Neural networks become computer systems. Bone and muscle become structural elements. It is ... horrible." The room fell silent. Brooks had seen many terrible things in her career, but the idea of being turned into spare parts while still alive was particularly disturbing. "We need to see their capabilities for ourselves," she said finally. "Do you have any recent battle?" "Recordings?" Zethara hesitated. "The images are quite disturbing." "We can handle it," Brooks assured him. The holographic display changed to show a space battle. Zelhari ships, elegant and graceful, fired precise energy beams at Vorthic vessels. The alien ships looked like something from a nightmare, all organic curves and pulsing biomechanical components. They absorbed the Zelhari weapons' fire with no apparent damage, then responded with living projectiles that burrowed into enemy hulls. Brooks watched Zelhari ships being consumed from the inside out. The crew's screams were audible over the communication channels. Within minutes, the attacked vessels stopped moving. Then they began to change, their hulls rippling and reforming as the Vorthic bioweapons converted them into something else entirely. "Jesus," Brooks whispered. The Zelhari all cringed at her tone. To them, she sounded like a predator that had just spotted prey. "You see why we are desperate," Zethara said. "Our weapons are useless. Our tactics are ineffective. We are not warriors." "No," Brooks agreed. "You're not. But we are." She stood up, and the Zelhari pressed themselves even flatter against the wall. Brooks realized she was unconsciously showing her teeth, a human expression of determination that the aliens interpreted as a threat display. "We'll help you," she said, trying to soften her expression. "But we're going to do it our way. And our way is probably going to seem pretty scary to you." "Scarier than the Vorthic?" Zithara asked. Brooks thought about human military doctrine. Total war, overwhelming force, no prisoners, no mercy for enemies who threatened innocent people. "Maybe," she said honestly. "But we're scary on your side." The meeting ended with the Zelhari agreeing to allow human forces to base themselves in their territory. They seemed to view it as choosing between two different kinds of monsters. Brooks did not blame them for that assessment. As they left the station, Turner shook his head. "That went worse than I expected." "It went exactly as I expected," Brooks replied. "They wanted Garden World warriors. They got Deathworld Marines. Now they're learning the difference." "And what's the difference?" Brooks smiled, and this time she did not try to hide her teeth. "Garden World warriors fight to protect their paradise. Deathworld warriors fight because everything else is already trying to kill them anyway." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster stood in the briefing room aboard the UES Vengeance, looking at the mixed group of humans and Zelhari officers. The aliens still flinched every time she moved, but they were trying to hide it. That was progress, she supposed. "The Vorthic scouting fleet will reach the Kepler system in 6 hours," she announced. "We have 12 human ships and 8 Zelhari vessels. The enemy has 15 bioships, but intelligence suggests they're smaller than their main battle units." A Zelhari officer named Veltar raised his hand. He was braver than most of his species, but Foster could still see him trembling. "Colonel Foster, what is our tactical approach?" Foster looked at the holographic display showing ship positions. "We hit them hard and fast. The Zelhari ships will provide precision fire support, while human vessels engage at close range." "Close range?" Veltar's voice went up an octave. "But that increases casualty probability by 47%. It also increases our chance of winning by about 90%, Foster replied. "The Vorthic bioships are tough, but they're not invincible. We get in close, we pound them until they break." The other Zelhari officers exchanged worried glances. Their entire military philosophy was based on minimizing risk and casualties. The idea of deliberately entering dangerous situations was foreign to them. "What about retreat protocols?" asked another Zelhari officer. "What about them?" Foster asked. If the battle goes badly, when do we withdraw to preserve our forces? Foster studied the alien for a moment. We don't retreat. We win or we die trying. Those are the only two options. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. The Zelhari looked like they were reconsidering their alliance with humanity. Foster could not blame them. From their perspective, humans probably seemed like suicide bombers with spaceships. Chief Engineer Danny Clark was having his own problems in the engineering section. He was working with Veltar's technical staff to coordinate their different technologies. The results were frustrating for everyone involved. Your power systems are incredibly efficient, Clark admitted, studying the Zelhari ship schematics. But what happens if they get damaged? Damaged? The Zelhari engineer looked confused. Our systems are designed not to be damaged. Multiple redundancies, automatic repairs, fail-safe protocols. But what if they fail anyway? They do not fail, Clark sighed. Everything fails eventually. That's why human ships are built to keep working when half their systems are offline. He pulled up the technical specifications for the U's Vengeance. The Zelhari engineers stared at the display in horror. Your ship can function with 60% of its systems destroyed? One of them asked. 70% on a good day, Clark said proudly. We had a destroyer that made it home with nothing but life support and one engine. Crew had to steer by hand. That is terrifying, the Zelhari engineer whispered. That's Tuesday, Clark replied. The first joint battle took place in the asteroid field around Kepler 442. The Vorthix scouting fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 15 bioships that looked like infected whales crossed with mechanical spiders. They moved in perfect formation, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Foster watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as the enemy approached. All ships, this is Foster. Zelhari vessels, begin precision targeting. Human ships, prepare for assault formation. The Zelhari ships opened fire first. Their energy weapons were incredibly accurate, striking the Vorthig bioships with surgical precision. The beams cut through enemy hulls, causing visible damage. But the wounds began healing almost immediately, biomechanical systems regenerating. The damaged areas. Their adaptive defenses are incredible, reported the Zelhari fleet commander. We are having minimal effect. Copy that, Foster replied. All human ships, commence attack run. The human vessels accelerated toward the enemy fleet. Where the Zelhari had tried to fight from a safe distance, the humans charged straight into the middle of the Vorthik formation. Energy beams and bioprojectiles hammered their hulls, but the human ships kept coming. Foster felt the Vengeance shake as something organic slammed into their port side. Damage report. Hull breach on deck 7, reported the damage control officer. Sealing now. Keep us moving, Foster ordered. Target that big one in the center. The Vengeance's main guns opened fire at point-blank range. The concentrated firepower tore through the Vorthik bioship's hull, punching deep into its organic core. The alien vessel writhed like a wounded animal, its biomechanical systems trying desperately to repair the damage. It's adapting to our weapons, warned the tactical officer. Energy resistance is increasing. Then we switched to kinetic rounds, Foster replied. Sometimes the old ways work best. The human ships began firing solid metal projectiles instead of energy beams. The Vorthik bioships had adapted to absorb energy weapons, but they had no defense against chunks of metal moving at incredible speed. The kinetic rounds punched through their hulls like bullets through tissue. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 12 Vorthik bioships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 3 had fled. The human fleet had taken heavy damage, but all ships were still operational. The Zelhari vessels were mostly intact, having stayed at safe distances throughout the fight. Casualty report, Foster requested. 14 dead, 37 wounded, came the reply. Foster nodded grimly. To humans, those were acceptable losses for a major victory. To the Zelhari, they were horrifying. Colonel Foster, came Veltar's voice over the communication channel. We need to discuss what just happened. What about it? Foster asked. You lost 14 people. 14 thinking beings who will never return home. And you consider this a victory? Foster looked at the tactical display showing the destroyed Vorthic ships. Those bioships were heading for a colony with 2 million civilians. We stopped them. Yes, that's a victory. But the cost of not fighting would have been higher, Foster interrupted. That's what you people don't understand. Sometimes, you have to risk everything to save what matters. There was a long pause. Then Veltar spoke again, his voice thoughtful. Your species has a different relationship with death than ours. We live on a planet that tries to kill us every day. Foster replied, We learned early that death is always a possibility. But we also learned that some things are worth dying for. Captain Rick Stone led the rescue mission to the Vorthic processing facility on the edge of the system. Intelligence had detected Zelhari life signs inside the biomechanical structure, prisoners being prepared for conversion into war machine components. The facility was a nightmare of organic architecture and mechanical systems. Corridors that pulsed like arteries led to chambers where living beings were being systematically disassembled. The sounds echoing through the structure were horrible, a mixture of mechanical grinding and organic suffering. Jesus, whispered one of Stone's Marines. What is this place? Hell, Stone replied, and we're here to shut it down. The rescue team moved through the facility with military precision. They found the Zelhari prisoners in conversion chambers, connected to biomechanical systems that were slowly breaking down their bodies. Many were already too far gone to save, but dozens could still be rescued. Plant the charges, Stone ordered. We're turning this place into space dust. The explosives were human-designed, crude but effective. When they detonated, the entire facility came apart in a chain reaction of fire and destruction. The rescue shuttle escaped just as the structure collapsed in on itself. Of the 300 Zelhari prisoners who had been taken, they saved 68. To the humans, it was a successful rescue. To the Zelhari, it was a miracle. How did you do it? Veltar asked later. How did you enter that place of horror and not break? Stone looked at the rescued prisoners, many of whom were still recovering from their ordeal. Someone had to. That's what we do. But why? They were not your people. Doesn't matter, Stone replied. They were people. That's enough. The Zelhari were beginning to understand that their new allies were not just warriors. They were something else entirely, something their peaceful culture had never imagined. They were beings who chose to fight, not because they enjoyed it, but because someone had to, and they were willing to pay any price to protect those who could not protect themselves. Major Kate Sullivan stood in the ring on Nesher Prime, watching the first group of Zelhari volunteers struggle through the mud. The training facility had been built in the worst possible location, exactly as she had planned. If these aliens were going to fight alongside humans, they needed to learn that war was not clean or comfortable. Move faster. She shouted at a group of Zelhari who were trying to crawl under a barrier. The Vorthic are not going to wait for you to find a comfortable position. The aliens were exhausted after only 2 hours of basic training. Their elegant movements had turned into clumsy stumbling as they tried to navigate obstacles designed to test human endurance. Several had already collapsed and were being helped by medics. This is impossible, gasped one of the volunteers, a young Zelhari named Kethmo. No being can maintain this pace. Humans do it every day, Sullivan replied. And they do it while people are shooting at them. The Zelhari looked at her with something approaching horror. Their species had never developed the concept of physical training for combat. Their wars, when they happened at all, were fought with technology and tactics. The idea of preparing the body for violence was completely foreign to them. "Why do? You make us crawl through dirt?" asked another volunteer. "Because when your ship crashes and you have to walk 20 miles to the pickup point, you need to know you can do it," Sullivan explained. "Because when your equipment breaks and you have to fix it with your hands, you need to be strong enough. Because when everything goes wrong, your body is the only thing you can count on." The training continued for weeks. The Zelhari learned to fight with broken weapons, to navigate by the stars, to treat wounds with basic supplies. They learned that humans considered backup plans for their backup plans to be normal procedure. Most importantly, they learned that humans never gave up. The key to human military thinking, Sullivan explained to a group of exhausted Zelhari officers, is that we assume everything will go wrong. We plan for failure. We expect disasters. And we keep fighting anyway. The cultural exchange worked in both directions. Human soldiers attended Zelhari tactical seminars, learning precision and efficiency. The aliens showed them how to coordinate attacks with mathematical precision, how to minimize waste and maximize effectiveness. Sergeant Mike Chung found himself working closely with a Zelhari strategist named Valtos. The alien had an incredible mind for logistics and supply management, areas where humans tended to rely on brute force solutions. "Your supply lines are chaotic," Valtos observed, studying human military organization charts. "How do you ensure adequate resources reach the front lines?" "We send way more than we need," Chun replied. "If we need 100 bullets, we send 1,000. If we need one spare part, we send 10. But that is incredibly wasteful. Waste is cheap. Running out of ammunition when people are shooting at you is expensive." The hybrid tactics that emerged from this cooperation proved devastatingly effective. Human aggression guided by Zelhari. Precision created a style of warfare that neither species had imagined alone. The results were tested when the Vorthik launched a major assault on the mining world of Va. Kepler-442b. Colonel Mike Torres had been given command of the defense. The planet was important to the Zelhari economy, providing rare minerals needed for their technology. It was also home to 3 million civilians who could not be evacuated in time. "The Vorthik are coming with everything they have," Torres announced to his mixed human Zelhari command staff. Intelligence reports 47 bioships, including 6 heavy assault vessels. The Zelhari officers looked nervous. It was the largest Vorthik force ever assembled, easily capable of overwhelming the planet's defenses. "What are our chances?" asked Commander Valenosh. "Honestly, pretty bad," Torres replied. "We're outnumbered 3-1, and they have the advantage in ship size and firepower." "Then we should evacuate," Valenosh suggested. "Save what we can." "No," Torres said firmly. "We hold the line here. This is where we make our stand." The battle for Kepler-442b began in orbit and quickly moved to the planet's surface. The Vorthik bioships broke through the defensive screen, landing massive drop pods that released swarms of biomechanical soldiers. These creatures were nightmares of flesh and metal, designed for maximum psychological impact. Torres had prepared for this. Human engineers had spent weeks turning the mining tunnels into defensive positions. Every corridor was trapped, every chamber was fortified, every route of advance was covered by overlapping fields of fire. "Let them come," Torres said as the first wave of Vorthik soldiers approached the tunnel entrances. "We'll be waiting." The underground fighting was brutal. The Vorthik bio-soldiers were individually superior to humans, faster and stronger, and equipped with living weapons that could adapt to any situation. But they had never faced an enemy that used the environment itself as a weapon. The humans had. collapsed tunnel sections to create choke points, flooded lower levels to slow enemy movement, and rigged entire areas with explosives. The Zalhari provided precise targeting data, allowing human heavy weapons to strike with surgical accuracy, even in the chaotic underground environment. "They're adapting to our tactics," reported Captain Jenny Walsh from the forward positions. "Their bioarmor is getting harder to penetrate." "Then we changed tactics," Torres replied. "All units switch to flame weapons. See how they adapt to being on fire." The human flamethrowers proved devastatingly effective. The Vorthic biosoldiers could adapt to energy weapons and projectiles, but they had no defense against simple fire. The creatures that had seemed invincible began to retreat, their living components unable to function in the extreme heat. Dr. Emma Rodriguez was working in the field hospital, treating wounded from both species. She had made a disturbing discovery about Vorthic biology that changed everything. "Colonel Torres, you need to see this," she called over the communication link. "I've been studying the enemy bodies we recovered." "What about them?" Torres asked. "They're not adapting the way we thought. They're breaking down. The constant pressure, the sustained combat, it's causing systemic failures in their biomechanical systems." Torres paused in his tactical planning. "Explain." "Their species evolved to overwhelm weaker opponents quickly. They've never faced sustained resistance. The psychological stress of prolonged combat is literally destroying their ability to function." This was revolutionary information. The Vorthic had seemed invincible because they had never encountered enemies who refused to give up. Their biomechanical systems were designed for short, decisive battles, not the grinding warfare that humans considered normal. "So what you're saying is that the longer we fight, the weaker they get?" "Exactly. Their greatest weakness is that they expect to win quickly. When that doesn't happen, they start to fall apart." Torres smiled grimly. "Then we're going to give them the longest, nastiest fight they've ever experienced." The battle for Kepler 442b lasted 6 days. The Vorthic threw everything they had at the human Zalhari defenders, but the aliens had never faced enemies who became more dangerous when wounded. Every setback made the humans more determined. Every casualty made them fight harder. By the 4th day, the Vorthic biosoldiers were showing signs of systematic breakdown. Their weapons stopped adapting. Their coordination began to fail. Creatures that had seemed invincible began making basic tactical errors. "They're panicking," observed Velanash, watching enemy movement patterns from the command center. "I have never seen anything like it." "Welcome to human warfare," Torres replied. "We don't just fight to win. We fight to prove that we can't be beaten." The Vorthic withdrawal began on the 6th day. The surviving bioships fled the system, leaving behind massive casualties and equipment. The defenders had held, but at a terrible cost. Nearly 1,000 human and Zalhari soldiers had been killed or wounded. Was it worth it? Velanash asked as they surveyed the battlefield. Torres looked at the 3 million civilians who were still alive because of their sacrifice. "Ask me again in 50 years. If we're still here to ask the question, then yes, it was worth it." The victory at Kepler 442b sent shockwaves through both armies. The Vorthic had learned that humans could not be intimidated or overwhelmed. The Zalhari had learned that some things were worth any price to defend. Most importantly, both species had learned that they were stronger together than apart. The combination of human determination and Zalhari precision had created something new, something that neither the peaceful garden worlders nor the savage Vorthic had ever imagined. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when Deathworlders decided to protect their friends. Admiral Frank Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching 200 human warships drop out of hyperspace around Desha Prime. The sight was impressive even to him, and he had been commanding fleets for 30 years. The ships stretched across space like a metal constellation, each one scarred from battles but ready for more. "My God," whispered Veltar from beside him. The Zelhari scientist had become the unofficial liaison between the species, one of the few aliens who could work closely with humans without fainting. "How many ships does Earth have?" "This is about 10% of our active fleet," Davis replied casually. "We've got mining operations, colony defense, pirate hunting, and exploration missions all running at the same time." Veltar stared at him. "This is a small portion of your military?" "We're not even at war mobilization yet," Davis said. "If Earth really geared up for war, we could probably field 10 times this many ships within 6 months." The Zelhari had trouble understanding the scale of human military production. What they considered a massive war effort, humans treated as routine peacekeeping. Their industrial capacity was designed around the assumption that everything would eventually break, wear out, or get destroyed, so they built everything in huge quantities. "Your species is terrifying," Veltar said quietly. "Yeah, we get that a lot," Davis replied. "But we're terrifying on your side, which is what matters." The combined fleet began preparing for Operation Deathstrike, the largest military action in Zelhari history. The target was the Vortex staging area in the Crimson Nebula, a massive biomechanical complex that served as their forward command center dot in the planning room. Human and Zelhari officers worked together to coordinate the assault. The cooperation that had seemed impossible months ago now flowed naturally. The two species had learned to complement each other's strengths and cover each other's weaknesses. The Vorthek have 43 heavy bioships defending the complex, reported Commander Lisa Parker, the human intelligence officer, plus an unknown number of smaller vessels and defensive installations. "Their bio-armor is strongest against energy weapons," added Velinash, the Zelhari tactical expert. "But our combined analysis suggests they have not adapted to kinetic bombardment." "Good," said Admiral Brooks. "We'll use that. Zelhari ships will provide precision targeting, while human vessels deliver massive kinetic strikes." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Zelhari would identify weak points with surgical accuracy. Then the humans would hit those points with overwhelming force. It was the perfect combination of Garden World precision and Deathworld brutality. The battle began at the edge of the Crimson Nebula. The Vorthik bioships moved to intercept the Alliance fleet, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent threat displays. They had learned from previous defeats and adapted their tactics, but they still did not understand what they were really fighting. "All ships, commence attack," Davis ordered. The human vessels charged forward in loose formations, their hulls already taking damage from Vorthik bioweapons. Behind them, the Zelhari ships moved with mathematical precision, their targeting computers calculating optimal firing solutions. The first exchange was devastating. Vorthik bioprojectiles slammed into human ships, boring through armor and releasing corrosive agents. But the human vessels kept coming, their redundant systems allowing them to fight even with massive damage. "Direct hit on the Yorktown," reported the communications officer. "They've lost main power." "Are they withdrawing?" asked Veltar. "Hell no," Davis replied. "They're switching to backup systems and continuing the attack. That's what we do." The Yorktown, running on emergency power and with half her weapons destroyed, continued firing at the enemy. Her captain had welded the manual controls in place when the electronic systems failed. The crew was literally steering the ship by hand, but they were still fighting. Commander Lisa Parker led a special operations team deep into Vorthik territory while the main battle raged. Their mission was intelligence gathering, but what they found changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The captured Vorthik command ship was a nightmare of organic technology and suffering prisoners. But hidden in the biomechanical computers Parker's team found something unexpected, star charts showing the Vorthic's origin point. "They're not from this galaxy," Parker reported over the encrypted channel. "These charts show them fleeing from something in the Andromeda galaxy." "Fleeing? From what?" asked Davis. "Something they call the Devourers. According to these records, their entire home galaxy is being consumed by some kind of machine intelligence. The Vorthic aren't conquerors. They're refugees." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Alliance command. Everything they thought they knew about the enemy was wrong. The Vorthic were not evil invaders seeking conquest. They were desperate survivors, using the only methods they knew to secure a new home. "Their bioconversion technology," Parker continued, "it's not a weapon. It's their way of preserving life. When they turn other species into components, they're trying to save them from whatever destroyed their home galaxy." The moral implications were staggering. The Alliance had been fighting what they thought were genocidal monsters, only to discover they were refugees from an even greater horror. "What do we do with this information?" asked VEL *Tar. Davis studied the data for a long moment. "We finish this battle first. Then we figure out how to talk to them." The battle for the Crimson Nebula lasted 8 hours. The Vorthic fought with desperate fury, but the combined human-Zelhari fleet was too much for them. The biomechanical complex was destroyed, along with most of the defending fleet. But the cost was high. 17 human ships were lost, along with thousands of crew members. "Victory," announced Velanash, but his voice carried no joy. "Is it?" Davis asked. "We just destroyed the last hope of a dying species." The aftermath of the battle was complicated. The surviving Vorthic ships had fled deeper into unknown space, but they had left behind prisoners and data that revealed the full scope of their tragedy. Their home galaxy was gone, consumed by machines that turned entire star systems into raw materials. "They came here because they had nowhere else to go," explained Dr. Turner to the Alliance Council. "Their bioconversion technology was there. Attempt to preserve as much life as possible in a compact, efficient form. But they were killing entire populations," protested one of the Zelhari counselors. "They were saving them," Turner replied. "From their perspective, incorporation into their biomechanical systems was better than total extinction." The debate that followed split the Alliance. Some Zelhari wanted to pursue and destroy the remaining Vorthic forces. Others argued for attempting communication and negotiation. The humans, surprisingly, pushed for a third option. "We teach them a better way," proposed Admiral Brooks. "We show them that there are alternatives to bioconversion. We help them find a real home." "You want to help the creatures that tried to genocide us?" asked Zethara. "We want to help the refugees who didn't know any other way to survive," Brooks replied. "Earth's history is full of enemies who became allies once they learned." There was another option. The discussion continued for days. Meanwhile, long-range sensors detected something troubling at the edge of the galaxy. Massive ships, unlike anything in the databases, were moving through the outer systems. They were heading toward the core, worlds following the quantum trail left by the ancient beacon. "The Devourers," whispered Parker, studying the sensor readings. "They followed the Vorthic here." The ships were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with mechanical precision, systematically dismantling everything in their path. Planets, asteroids, even stars were being broken down into component elements and rebuilt into more ships. "How many are there?" asked Davis. "We count at least 1,000, reported the sensor officer. "And more are arriving every hour." The Alliance fleet that had seemed so powerful suddenly looked pathetically small. Even with human industrial capacity and Zelhari precision, they could not hope to match the sheer scale of this new threat. "We need the Vorthic," Davis said quietly. "They're the only ones who have fought these things before. Even if we could find them, why would they help us?" asked Veltar. Because, Davis replied, we're all in this together now. The Devourers don't care about politics or species differences. They just consume everything they find. The irony was not lost on anyone. The desperate call for help that had brought humans to this galaxy had now summoned an even greater threat. The Deathworlders who had seemed so terrifying to the peaceful Zelhari were now their only hope against something far worse. Send a message on all frequencies, Davis ordered. Tell the Vorthic we want to talk. Tell them we have a common enemy now. The response came 3 days later. A single Vorthic bioship, badly damaged and running on minimal power, approached the Alliance fleet under a flag of truce. This is Hive Mind Zarthok, came the alien voice over the communication channel. You destroyed our staging area. You scattered our fleets. Why do you now seek discourse? Because, Davis replied, the Devourers are coming, and none of us can stop them alone. There was a long pause. Then the Vorthic voice spoke again, and for the first time, it carried something. Other than hostility, you know the Great Consuming? You understand what approaches. Captain Steve Morgan walked slowly through the neutral space station where the first human-Vorthic diplomatic meeting was taking place. The station had been hastily constructed in the empty space between galaxies, far from any worlds that might be caught in the crossfire if negotiations failed. The Vorthic delegation was unlike anything Morgan had expected. Instead of the monstrous biomechanical creatures he had fought in battle, he found beings that looked almost fragile. Without their war modifications, the Vorthic were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed translucent. Their large eyes held an intelligence that was clearly alien, but undeniably real. Captain Morgan, said the lead Vorthic through a translation device, I am Hive Mind Zarthok. We meet under strange circumstances. Stranger than you know, Morgan replied. 6 months ago, we were trying to kill each other. Now we're planning to fight together. The Great Consuming changes all equations, Zarthok said. When faced with total extinction, former enemies must become allies or perish separately. The negotiations were tense from the beginning. The Vorthic had difficulty understanding human concepts of individual rights and personal freedom. Humans struggled with the Vorthic hive mind structure and their casual attitude toward individual death. Your bioconversion process, said Dr. Turner, the human xenobiologist. Our people see it as murder. You see it as preservation. How do we reconcile this? We preserve the essence of consciousness within our collective, Zarthok explained. Individual bodies may cease, but thoughts and memories continue within the hive mind. Is this not better than complete destruction? Not to us, Turner replied. We believe individual consciousness is sacred. The person matters as much as their thoughts. The cultural divide seemed impossible to bridge until Admiral Brooks suggested a practical approach. We don't need to agree on philosophy, she said. We need to agree on tactics. The Devourers are coming, whether we like each other or not. The talks nearly collapsed when Vorthic extremists attempted to assassinate the human delegation. The attack came during a formal dinner when biomechanical assassins burst through the station's walls. They had expected to find soft diplomats. Who would panic under attack? Instead, they found humans. Morgan drew his sidearm before the first assassin had fully entered the room. The other human diplomats scattered to defensive positions with military precision, returning fire while protecting their alien counterparts. The battle lasted 3 minutes and ended with all the assassins dead and the human delegation barely scratched. Remarkable, said Zarthok, studying the aftermath. Your diplomatic staff fights like warriors. All humans are warriors when they need to be, Morgan replied, reloading his weapon. It's one of the benefits of coming from a death world. The failed assassination attempt actually strengthened the negotiations. The Vorthic moderates were impressed by human resilience and protective instincts. Even when attacked, the humans had prioritized defending their alien allies over their own safety. Perhaps, said Zarthok, there is wisdom in your individual-focused philosophy. A hive mind would have calculated optimal survival and abandoned the weaker members. That's exactly why we'll never be conquered, Brooks said. We fight for each other, not just for survival. Admiral Helen Wright arrived 3 weeks later with the largest fleet in human history. 500 warships, including the massive Dreadnought Hughes Defiance, took positions around the neutral station. The show of force was meant to impress the Vorthik, and it worked. Your species builds impressive war machines, observed a Vorthik military commander named Mordith. But can they stand against the Great Consuming? We're about to find out. Wright replied. Our scouts report the Devourer fleet has reached the Outer Rim. They'll be here in 2 weeks. The Galactic Defense Coalition was officially formed that day. 3 species, former enemies, united by necessity and desperation. The ceremony was simple and practical, focused on military coordination rather than political speeches. The real test came when the Devourer Advance Fleet arrived at the edge of the Zelhari system. Long-range sensors showed 12 massive vessels, each one larger than anything the Coalition had ever built. They moved with mechanical precision, consuming asteroids and space debris to fuel their continued advance. My God, whispered Veltar from the bridge of the Coalition flagship. They're harvesting the entire asteroid belt. The first battle was a disaster. Coalition ships opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the Devourer hulls. The enemy vessels returned fire with beams that disintegrated matter at the atomic level. 6 ships were destroyed in the first exchange. Fall back, ordered Admiral Wright. Regroup at the secondary defensive line. But Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, had a different idea. All human ships switched to ramming speed. We're going to test their point defense systems. Admiral, that's suicide, protested Velinage. Maybe, Morrison replied. But it's also data. We need to know how they react to close-range attacks. The human ships accelerated toward the nearest Devourer vessel, their crews preparing for impact. The alien ship's defensive systems activated, shooting down most of the attackers. But 3 ships made it through, slamming into the Devourer's hull at incredible speed. The explosions were spectacular, but the damage was minimal. However, something interesting happened in the aftermath. The Devourer ship paused its advance and began analyzing the wreckage, as if trying to understand what had happened. They're curious about us, reported Dr. Rodriguez from the science station. The attack pattern didn't fit their programming. They're trying to categorize us. Then let's give them something really confusing, Morrison said with a grim smile. The Coalition began using unpredictable tactics that defied military logic. Human ships would charge directly at superior forces, then withdraw at random intervals. Vorthik bioships would sacrifice themselves to save Zelhari vessels, defying hive mind efficiency calculations. Zelhari commanders would make emotional decisions based on protecting their crews rather than optimal outcomes. The psychological warfare worked. The Devourer ships began making tactical errors, their mechanical minds unable to process illogical behavior. They had been designed to fight rational opponents who followed predictable patterns. They're machines, realized Dr. Turner. Advanced artificial intelligences, but still machines. They can't adapt to truly chaotic behavior. The revelation changed everything. The Coalition stopped trying to match the Devourers in firepower and started focusing on confusion and unpredictability. They used human creativity, Vorthik adaptability, and Zelhari precision in random combinations that broke every rule of military doctrine. The turning point came when Morrison led a desperate assault on the Devourer command ship. Instead of a coordinated attack, the Coalition forces approached from dozens of different directions, using completely incompatible tactics that should have resulted in disaster. "This is insane," reported the Devourer ship's tactical computer to its central intelligence. "Enemy forces are exhibiting behavior that contradicts all known strategic principles." "Exactly," Morrison said, listening to the intercepted communications. "Welcome to fighting Deathworlders." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Devourer advance fleet was destroyed, their mechanical minds unable to cope with opponents who refused to follow logical patterns. The victory came at a terrible cost, with nearly half the Coalition fleet destroyed or damaged. But they had won. The news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy. The mechanical monsters that had consumed an entire galaxy had been stopped by a coalition of former enemies who had learned to fight together. "How did we do it?" asked Zethara at the victory celebration. Morrison looked around the room, seeing humans, Zalari, and Vorthic officers celebrating together. 6 months ago, they had been trying to kill each other. Now they were planning joint colonies and shared research projects. "We did what humans do best," he said. "We turned enemies into friends, and then we fought like hell to protect those friends." The quantum beacon that had started everything was still active, sending its message across the galaxy. But now the message was different. Instead of calling for help, it was broadcasting a new signal. Garden worlds, Deathworlders, and former enemies united. "The galaxy is protected." Admiral Wright raised her glass in a toast. "They called for help and summoned Deathworlders instead. Turns out that was exactly what the galaxy needed." The Galactic Defense Coalition became the foundation for a new age of cooperation. Humans shared their resilience and determination. Selhari contributed their precision and efficiency. The Vorthic offered their adaptability and collective wisdom. Together, they built something stronger than any of them could have achieved alone. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's protectors, proving that sometimes the most unlikely allies make the best friends. And in the depths of space, more Devourer fleets were approaching. But now they would face not scattered, frightened civilizations, but a united galaxy that had learned the most important lesson of all. When Deathworlders decide to protect something, nothing in the universe can stop them.